Only a few hours ago in Shanghai, something happened that could completely change the future of Formula One. A 19-year-old rookie just shocked the entire paddock. Kimi Antonelli. Second race weekend of his career. And he just took pole position for the Chinese Grand Prix. Ahead of world champions. Ahead of veterans. Ahead of drivers with hundreds of races of experience. But here is where the story becomes much more interesting. Because minutes after that lap, rival teams started looking at the data. And what they found raised serious questions. Antonelli's lap was not just fast. It was almost perfect. Perfect energy deployment. Perfect traction out of the slow corners. And on the longest straight in Shanghai, the Mercedes suddenly looked unstoppable. Meanwhile, the rest of the grid was struggling. Max Verstappen could only qualify 8th. More than 1.5 seconds behind. Ferrari could not match the straight-line speed. McLaren could not match the energy efficiency. And suddenly the entire paddock started asking the same question. How did Mercedes unlock that performance so early in the season? Because if the data from Antonelli's lap is correct, the W17 may have already solved the biggest puzzle of the new regulation era. Energy management. And if that is true, the consequences for the rest of the grid could be enormous. But the real shock came when several teams began comparing the telemetry sector by sector. Because one specific detail in the data from that lap did not look normal. Not illegal. But unusual enough to trigger immediate attention. Which is why engineers across the paddock spent hours analyzing Antonelli's pole lap after qualifying. Trying to understand one thing. Did a 19-year-old rookie just deliver the lap of a lifetime? Or did Mercedes reveal a technical advantage the rest of Formula One has not discovered yet? Subscribe to the channel, because what the data revealed after qualifying in China might explain why Mercedes suddenly looks unbeatable. The moment qualifying ended in Shanghai, the entire paddock turned its attention to one thing. Kimi Antonelli's lap. Because it was not just fast. It was shockingly clean. Every corner looked controlled. Every braking zone looked precise. And every acceleration zone seemed perfectly timed. For a rookie in only his second race weekend, that kind of lap immediately raised eyebrows across the garages. But the real curiosity started once the data from qualifying began circulating among the teams. In modern Formula One, engineers constantly compare telemetry, speed traces, energy deployment, throttle application, brake pressure. Every detail tells a story. And when several teams started analyzing Antonelli's lap sector by sector, one particular area immediately stood out. The final sector of the Shanghai circuit. This is one of the most difficult sectors in Formula One. It combines a series of long, flowing corners with one of the longest straights on the calendar. To be fast there, a car must do two things perfectly. Carry speed through the final corners. And deploy energy efficiently on the straight. Most teams struggle to balance those two elements. If the car carries too much downforce for the corners, it loses speed on the straight. If the setup favors straight-line speed, the car becomes unstable through the final turns. But during Antonelli's lap, the Mercedes W17 seemed to handle both perfectly. Through the long right-hand corner before the straight, the car remained incredibly stable. Antonelli carried more speed than most drivers. Then, as soon as he exited the corner and applied full throttle, the Mercedes launched down the straight with incredible acceleration. That moment immediately caught the attention of rival engineers. Because under the new power unit regulations, managing hybrid energy deployment has become one of the most complex challenges in Formula One. Every team must decide exactly when to deploy electrical power during a lap. Use too much energy early, and the car runs out of boost before the end of the straight. Save too much energy, and the car loses acceleration when exiting corners. Finding the perfect balance is extremely difficult. And yet, during Antonelli's lap, the Mercedes appeared to deploy energy almost perfectly. The speed trace looked smooth. No sudden drops. No early loss of power. Just a steady, relentless acceleration all the way down the straight. For rival teams studying the data, that detail was impossible to ignore. Because most cars on the grid show a clear pattern. Strong acceleration at the beginning of the straight. Then a gradual drop as the electrical energy runs out. But the Mercedes seemed to maintain that acceleration longer than expected. Which immediately raised questions across the paddock. Not accusations. Not protests. Just curiosity. How did Mercedes achieve that level of efficiency so early in the season? Because the 2026 regulations introduced one of the most complex hybrid systems Formula One has ever seen. Energy recovery. Battery management. Deployment strategies. All controlled by extremely sophisticated software. Most teams are still learning how to optimize those systems under real race conditions. But Mercedes appears to have found something. A balance between power and efficiency that the others are still chasing. And Antonelli's pole lap in China may have just revealed it. But the story becomes even more fascinating when you look at the driver behind the wheel. Because Antonelli is not a veteran. He is not a world champion. He is a 19-year-old rookie who only recently stepped into Formula One. Yet during that qualifying lap, he looked completely in control. No hesitation. No visible mistakes. Just precision. Corner after corner. Which is exactly why the paddock reaction has been so intense. Because if a rookie can extract that level of performance from the Mercedes W17 already, then the potential of that car might be even greater than anyone expected. And that possibility is exactly what has made the rest of the grid nervous tonight. Because while Mercedes celebrates a front-row lockout in China, the rest of the paddock is trying to answer a much more important question. Did Kimi Antonelli simply deliver an extraordinary lap? Or did that qualifying session reveal that Mercedes may already have the fastest car of the new Formula One era? But the deeper engineers looked into Antonelli's pole lap, the more interesting the story became. Because the speed was only one part of it. What really caught the attention of rival teams was the consistency of the lap. Not just in one sector. Across the entire circuit. When analysts overlay the telemetry of several drivers, they normally see small variations everywhere. A driver brakes slightly earlier in one corner. Carries a little more speed in another. Applies throttle a fraction of a second later somewhere else. Even the best drivers in the world rarely produce a lap that looks perfectly smooth from start to finish. But Antonelli's lap in Shanghai looked different. Through the opening sector, the braking points were extremely precise. No corrections. No hesitation. Just one clean movement into each corner. Then came the long spiral turns at the beginning of the circuit. One of the most difficult sequences for any Formula One driver. A corner that tightens continuously, forcing the driver to balance steering, throttle, and brake pressure for several seconds. Most drivers make tiny corrections there. Small steering inputs. Micro adjustments to maintain the racing line. But Antonelli's car looked incredibly stable through that section. The steering trace remained almost perfectly smooth, which immediately triggered another wave of curiosity inside the paddock. Because that level of stability is not only about driver skill. It also reveals something about the car. Specifically, the balance of the chassis. The Mercedes W17 appears to have one of the most stable aerodynamic platforms on the grid. The front end responds immediately. The rear remains planted under load. And that combination allows the driver to attack corners with enormous confidence. Confidence is everything in qualifying. When the driver trusts the car, braking points move later. Corner entry speed increases. Throttle application becomes earlier. And suddenly tenths of a second appear. But the most fascinating part of Antonelli's lap appeared in the middle sector of the circuit. This section combines medium speed corners with heavy braking zones. A place where the balance between mechanical grip and aerodynamic downforce becomes critical. And once again, the Mercedes looked incredibly composed. Antonelli carried impressive speed through those corners. But what surprised many engineers was how calm the car looked under braking. No instability. No rear movement. No visible corrections from the driver. That level of braking stability suggests something very important about the Mercedes design philosophy. The W17 seems to allow extremely aggressive braking without destabilizing the rear of the car, which fits perfectly with the driving style of George Russell. And now, apparently, also with Antonelli. That shared characteristic between both drivers may be one of the hidden strengths of Mercedes this season. Because when two drivers can extract performance from the same setup philosophy, development becomes much easier. The team receives clear feedback. Engineers understand what direction to pursue. And the car evolves faster. But as impressive as the car looked in the corners, the final sector is where the real mystery appeared. That long straight in Shanghai is one of the ultimate tests of power unit efficiency. Under the new regulations, teams must carefully manage how energy is deployed during the lap. Electrical power from the hybrid system cannot simply be used everywhere. It must be carefully distributed. And yet, during Antonelli's lap, the Mercedes seemed to maintain strong acceleration longer than most rivals. That detail is extremely important. Because if a car can deploy energy more efficiently while still recovering enough under braking, it gains a huge advantage. Not just in qualifying, but during the race as well. And that is why engineers from several teams are now studying the Mercedes data so closely. They want to understand whether Antonelli's pole lap revealed something fundamental about the W17. Because if Mercedes has already optimized the relationship between energy recovery and deployment, then the team may have solved one of the biggest technical puzzles of the new regulation era. And that possibility is exactly what is making the rest of the paddock uneasy tonight. because the Chinese Grand Prix weekend has revealed two very different stories. On one side, Red Bull appears to be struggling with a car that feels difficult to control. Verstappen could only qualify 8th, more than 1.5 seconds away from pole. On the other side, Mercedes suddenly looks incredibly strong. Front row lockout, a rookie on pole position, and a car that seems perfectly adapted to the demands of the new regulations. But perhaps the most fascinating element of this entire situation is still the driver at the center of it. Kimi Antonelli, 19 years old, second race weekend of his Formula One career, and already delivering a lap that has forced the entire paddock to stop and pay attention. Because moments like this sometimes signal the arrival of something special. A new generation of driver. A new era of dominance. And tonight, as engineers continue studying the data from qualifying in Shanghai, one question keeps coming back again and again. Did Kimi Antonelli just deliver one incredible lap? Or did that lap reveal that Mercedes may already be one step ahead of the entire Formula One grid?